All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday night. You know what time it is. It's 8 p.m. or there, a little bits after. Tonight, we talking about the narrative that Black and Latino conservatives hate themselves because of their political view. Ladies and gentlemen, the Urban Conservative Podcast starts right about now.
Welcome to the Urban Conservative Podcast, where we do not believe that avocado toast can save the planet or the world will end, because cars use gasoline. You won't hear that Wi-Fi is a basic human right, or that billionaires are secretly supervillains. Here, we do not believe that electric cars run on hopes and dreams. You also won't hear that anyone who disagrees with us is a fascist, or that socialism will make everyone rich. You won't be gender affirmed or offered any opportunity to share your preferred pronouns. If this causes you any discomfort, please rest assured that we couldn't possibly care less. For everyone else, thank you, and please stand by.
My fellow Americans, it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. This is without a doubt the best podcast on the internet. It's about to go down here on the Urban Conservative.
3, 2, 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It's Monday night. That means it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. Yours truly, Abdul Ali, along with my twin brother from the same mother, Raheem Architect Soto, in the building. If you don't know, you better find out by visiting tucmedia.info to support what we do here at the Urban Conservative, which is to share conservative values and principles, as well as the benefits of conservative policies to urban communities across this great nation of ours. Again, tucmedia.info is the website to support what we do. Find out who you can get your little commercial ad and support the platform here. Bro, it's been about a week and a half, 2 weeks since we dropped the episode, man. People been wondering what's been going on, man. Yeah. Well, what's been going on, ladies and gentlemen, is we've been in them streets. I got to give a big shout out to the Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina. We just celebrated Freedom Day in the park this past Saturday, went down at Franklin's Park in Concord. Also, we would be remiss if we did not start this episode out. Matter of fact, I'm going to pause the music on this one. We got to give a big shout out, our condolences, thoughts, and prayers to the family, friends, loved ones, constituents, supporters of former U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham on his untimely passing away. Again, ladies and gentlemen, our thoughts and prayers, condolences go out to the family, friends, loved ones of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who passed away 71 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Unexpected and brief illness. You know, that should be a reminder that no man knoweth the hour, as they say. Just be mindful that how important time with your family, your friends, your loved ones is, because life is so short. And quite frankly, you know, before we jump into tonight's show, just a few words. Lindsey Graham is one of those people, well, if you disagree with him, you at least understood that he was coming from a genuine place. There were some things that I disagreed with him from a policy perspective on, but I never got the vibe that he was coming from a bad place, even when you would hear him speak on the Senate floor or talk to his colleagues in the Senate, which I've done. So again, our condolences, thoughts, and prayers out to the Real family. quick, Yeah. real quick before you do that, because I respectfully I didn't know Lindsey Graham. I just from a distance, you know, we watch our elected representation, but um a friend of the show, it's funny you say this. I have to out here, you know, I'm out in the town of Southampton, New York. I cannot start this show without giving my condolences and my prayers and my heart out to our Southampton town former councilman Rick Martell, who unexpectedly passed away last week. We had his services last week, and that is a super big loss for the town of Southampton, and for the East End in general. What I will say is that it is community leaders like Rick that are inspiring to us, people that love their community so much that they give of themselves and they put themselves out there and take all of the bumps and bruises and lashings that come with running for political office, especially in a contentious place. like the East End. So again, our condolences, our prayers, our respect goes out to uh, former Southampton Town Councilman Rick Martell, friend of the show, no longer with us. So um, while we were doing that, I just wanted to mention that, bro. So indeed. And one thing I'll tell you, brother, the one time I did have an opportunity to meet Rick, man, he was a great guy. I was really appreciative of the support that he offered you and all of the support that he gave you in your run and just being an all around fantastic guy when I met him. So condolences out to the family, friends, and loved ones of former Southampton Town Councilman Rick Martell. But, bro, we got an very interesting conversation to have tonight. And I think where this starts off, I think a good current example of this is your interaction with Congressman Nick LaLota. Shout out to Nick LaLota and his office, his team up there representing New York's first congressional district. But he had a post that he put up about some stuff, and you commented. And I think that's a great place to kind of jump off the conversation about this Black Republicans, Latinos, Asians, minorities in general who tend to be
Yeah,
conservative, hate themselves. So let's
the non-white Republicans, how when we choose to have a policy position, it turns into self-hate. So like you said, I was watching Congressman Nick LaLota's page, who's a friend of the show, and there's some contention here in the town of East Hampton. And let me give you guys some context where we are on the East End here in Suffolk County, New York. The East End is purple. You know, it's mostly blue. There's some red here, but it's mostly towns like East Hampton are controlled by the political left. And so what you have
mm,
here is this anti-law enforcement, anti-ICE sentiment. And that has trickled down, that's it affects this community because here's the thing.
mm,
When you tell your local municipal government that you're not going to obey federal law, that's not how this works. That's not how democracy in this country works. You can't pick and choose the policies that you want to follow as a
right.
municipality. You just can't do that. So this post here is referring to that. East Hampton Town and Village weak and woke leaders have adopted Suffolk County's first Mamdani Hochul style sanctuary policies, barring local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration authorities, even to help remove illegal immigrants in custody on RAPE, assault, and DUI charges. He goes on to say, I won't sit idly by and let Long Island become New York City's sixth borough. I've made it clear I will not support the CPF funding request until they reverse these dangerous policies and put public safety first. So I personally saw that and I said the following. A very simple statement here. I said, thank you for standing up for the rule of law and what's right. And Ali, if you want to take it from here, because it's kind of tiny on my screen, but you can unpack this for the folks.
So here's the bottom line. My brother made a comment basically right over the plate, I think, in what Nick LaLota was doing. But this idea, right, that as soon as my brother would make this comment, you would get somebody like this gentleman here who says, do you hate yourself, Raheem? Because Republicans hate people of color. Now,
And that's what sparked tonight's show, because I'm like, well, you see, let's look at my response first, and then we'll unpack it a little more. There
okay,
should be a
I,
response to that somewhere,
I
above it
don't
or
see it.
below it or somewhere. It's got to be there.
Not only response to him particularly.
No, I think that's there. I think it's there, unless it got deleted, but I doubt it. No, there's a
Yeah, I
there's a
don't see it.
comment there from me. You might have to go back up top. Well, my response to that was that that's a very, very silly thing to post. And Liz Jackson has a post. I don't understand where my comment is on that, but my comment was like, that's silly. First of all, oh, he said, "Get help," and I said, "Exactly with what?" And then it says, "Raheem Soda, do you hate yourself because Republicans hate people of color?" My response to that is that that's absolutely silly. Like that's a silly notion. The idea that Republicans hate people of color. But let's go back for a second, Ali, because I want to unpack the original claim. The original question that was asked to me is, "What would I do if ICE go back up? What would I do if ICE Liz profiled me?" right? That's
Right there.
what yeah. Hey, oh, Raheem, he would stand by ICE racially profiled you and locked you up, or rule of law includes due process, and they're ignoring that detail. I said respectfully, your premise is flawed. Immigration is not race-based, it's status-based. Does anybody disagree with that? That immigration law is not based on your race. It's not based on your skin color. It's not based on anything other than your immigration status. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement.
So I said ICE doesn't care about your race, they care about your immigration status. So your entire premise is disingenuous. And then it says respectfully, ICE is rounding people up in order of ethnicity. And this is the problem. This is where we run into this problem, because that is the most disingenuous statement to make. They're not rounding people up by whoever's promoting that, it's moronic. Respectfully, I don't have a better word for it, Ali. That it's absolutely moronic that you're going to suggest that they're rounding people up because of their ethnicity. That's a fear mongering at a level that that these people have been exposed to. That's creating this weird perception that that's what's happening, and that's definitely not what's happening.
So I wanna start here though. I wanna address this comment that Republicans hate people of color. Republicans hate people of color so much they just elected Felice Pete as the RNC woman to represent the state of North Carolina's 1.5 million plus Republicans at the RNC level. They elected a black woman to do that. Does that seem like something a party who hates black people, minorities, or Hispanics, does that sound like something they would do? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think this other idea, and it comes to most recently people like Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court and his dissent about the birthright citizenship, is sad because so many people are falling for the Roland Martin, they're falling for the Joy Reid, they're falling for the Al Sharpton, they're falling for the banana in the tailpipe of racial uh of basically of racial grifting, when in essence Clarence Thomas was defending black Americans and saying ideally that if you have no loyalty to this country, if you're just happen to be born here but your parents had no loyalty to this country, your parents came here to take advantage of the system, that puts you at the back of the line. That makes what your ancestors fought and bled and died for, it puts them, it makes what they sacrifice for less valuable. And it's bizarre, bro, when I see people on social media talking about Clarence Thomas as if he was we're talking about one of the greats of all time on the Supreme Court. When it comes to some of the dissents that he's written and some of the things that he's affirmed and his decisions, when you look at the things he stood up for. So I personally don't understand how you can look at somebody like a Clarence Thomas and call him an Uncle Tom or call him a coon. Or I made a point to somebody the other day, bro. I'm like, you're on Facebook, and from the looks of your Facebook page, you work at a fast food restaurant. Not that there's nothing wrong with that, but to be calling Clarence Thomas, who sits on the United States Supreme Court, a loser is wild.
Oh, I found the comment. So the comment to do you hate yourself, Raheem, because Republicans hate people of color, right?
Okay.
And so my response was respectfully, that is just a silly thing to say. And it's actually quite sad that you would suggest that. That's what's absolutely mind-boggling, is because you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know how many Republicans I know. You don't know what I do, and you've made this grandiose assumption, and it's actually not in tune with reality. So here's the
Mm.
thing to people like this, and we have to be clear about this, because I agree. I understand that we're going to be disagreeable when it comes to policy positions, but that's not what the leftists, unfortunately, our neighbors here. That's not what they actually believe. And the reality of it is that they've done no research on individuals. So they make these claims. And the reality of it is that you don't know who you're talking to. You have no
Clearly,
idea. Yeah, you have no
Clearly.
idea how many Republicans we know. You don't know anything about the individual, right? And maybe if you would have did a quick scroll through social media on us, because we're not hard to find, you'd go, oh, okay, these guys are in some form of fashion leadership within the Republican Party. So let's make that clear. Because I'm a conservative Republican, that doesn't mean I hate myself. And that the idea that the Republican Party hates minorities doesn't make sense because I'm in a town where minorities are really the minority. I live in the town of
Right.
Southampton where minorities are actually the minority. And so, with that said, I'm the vice chairman of my local Republican committee. I'm on my county Republican committee. I'm a member of the state committee. So, what in the world makes these people function like this is this input from the leftist media. And this isn't a tirade against media, but it seems to me, Ali, that and I don't know if the listeners will agree with this or not, but it seems like there's a level of emotional manipulation that's taken place that has circumvented rationale and logic. It just has totally bypassed people's sense of rationality because it doesn't like Republicans aren't a thing. Like Republicans aren't a race to hate anyone. There's conservatives, Asian Republicans, there's Chinese Republicans, there's Taiwanese Republicans, there's white Republicans. And then I gotta throw this out there too. Why we're saying that this narrative of self-hate because you're a conservative or because you're a Republican, why that's a dumb narrative. Let's ask the question, Ali, who started that narrative? Where did that narrative come from that if you're a conservative or you're a Republican, or let's insert the reality, or you're a Trump supporter, somehow
Mm.
you hate black people and you hate yourself? I'm who comes up with this? Who starts this narrative?
Yeah, that's got to be something that clearly comes from the left.
Agreed. So here's a few statements before we go to commercial, and I think we'll deal with this when we come back, right? Political ideology is not racial identity. I just want to be clear about that. Your
Mm.
political ideology is not a racial identity. So no racial group has a monopoly on a particular set of beliefs. And that's what the political left seems to think. They own morality. They
Mm.
these people have this self-grandiose ego that lets them believe that they control morality. So suggesting otherwise, right? That it reduces people to stereotypes, and that's the most racist part of this. And unfortunately, the people on the left that make this claim don't realize how racist they are, how bigoted they are. You have to be a bigot to ask a black man, does he hate himself because he's chosen a political side? That's
Yeah, that makes you.
suggesting it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nuts. That's
So I
crazy.
guess
But
we'll
ladies and
go take
gentlemen,
a take a quick
we're
commercial and
gonna
then we come
jump
back.
right. We'll take a quick commercial break, and we're gonna deal with this some more when we come back. And I want to specifically deal with Wesley Hunt and Byron Donalds. We'll be right back.
Woodson Bradley wants you to believe she fights for families, but she was a top platinum sales manager in Fortune High-Tech Marketing, an illegal pyramid scheme the Federal Trade Commission shut down. Over 350,000 people enrolled, and most of them lost everything. Woodson Bradley recruited them, and Woodson Bradley profited from their losses. And now she wants your vote. Woodson Bradley. Wrong then, wrong now. Paid for by Vote Mech.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're back on the Urban Conservative Podcast. Tonight, we are dealing with this self-hate narrative that somehow Black, Hispanic, non-white Republicans and conservatives somehow hate themselves or hate their race. Now, I want to deal with something specifically about this narrative, bro. How does this narrative hold water in the case of people like Wesley Hunt and Byron Donalds, when in fact they are representatives, congressional representatives that were elected, mind you, in majority white districts? How does this narrative that both of them married to minority women, how does this narrative play out when these are people who were descendant, in the case of Wesley Hunt, who I had an opportunity to meet and spend time with, and he talks about his grandfather growing up in Jim Crow. He talks about being the descendant of slaves. He talks about getting his commission and becoming an officer, an Apache pilot, having one of the highest security clearances you could get in the military. When if this guy was a Democrat, he would be called Black excellence. He would be called everything positive that the Democrats could muster. But because he's a Republican, because he's a conservative, he gets the label of coon, of Uncle Tom, of self-hating. Same thing with Byron Donalds. In a scenario where any other situation, if these people were on the left, they would be considered the cream of the crop of Black people. So how is it that you take the resume, the position, the standards of somebody like a Wesley Hunt, somebody like a Condoleezza Rice, somebody like a Byron Donalds, or a Harris Faulkner for that matter, who's successful in the media? How is it that a good chunk, I'm not going to say, well, I could say the majority and be right, but a good chunk of Black Americans will look at these folks and say they are not really Black? How does that happen?
I think it's a media narrative that's been spun. I think there's a lot at play here, but there's a disagreeable nature that's not grounded in reality. And this is what I'm gonna keep saying this, is that it appears that logic and reason have left the building. Critical thinking has hit the eject button because this is not a rational position to take for grown adults. To look at someone and say, because you subscribe to a set of political ideas, that means you hate yourself. That is a logical leap that shows a crack in people's critical thinking. This is to me a failure of education because it's just not a rational position. And I don't think anyone agrees that this is a rational position. And this is where you have people won't debate Wesley Hunt on the merit. People won't debate Byron Donalds on the merit of the argument. It'll turn into, you know, oh, it's just you're just kissing the white man's butt. So we're not judging on the other side of the aisle. They're not judging the arguments on the merit. They turn it into a personal attack on the like a personal attack on the identity of the person. So the narrative itself, Ali, in my opinion, I think it has its origins in this woke movement of 5-7 years ago. It has its inception in the subculture of the Black community that is very pan-African, pro-Black to their detriment, that it's almost illogical. And so this idea that if you speak proper English, right? Because factually or not, we were told because we chose to speak proper English that we're trying to talk white.
We were told that. My kids were told that. And I know a lot of people who listen to the show, their kids were told that.
Right. So when you say where's its inception come, I think it's an amalgamation of ideas that have came together in the perfect storm of BS. And so you have it reinforced rather by the political machine who and again when we talk about identity politics and we talk about politics, there's a scientific side to this. There's an actual scientific rational, logical reason for this. And there's phenomena that take place that the media uses. And this is not conspiracy talk. This is not, this is not a secret that psychology and psychiatry are a part of politics. That when you study political science, there's parts of it that deal with the human psyche and how to manipulate that. So I
Right.
part of it comes from that, and the narrative has its inception in this woke culture of about 7 years ago. Because before that, it was like, "Oh, you wanna move out the hood? You hate your people because I don't
Nah,
want
you know
where you're
what? I
pissing
think it
in the
goes back.
elevator?"
I think it goes back a little further. You know what I think? You know what I think a big part of it has to do with? And you're gonna be like, what? I think KRS-One is the problem.
Okay.
I think KRS when he came out with that song, Black Cop, Black Cop, Black Cop, Black Cop. Like I
Yeah,
think
can you
that's
pull up the lyrics for that?
okay. I can pull up
Can
the
you
lyrics
pull
to
up the
Black.
lyrics for that?
Hey, yo, I just sitting here
I think
thinking, I'm
that's a
like,
good point. But there's a bunch of songs like that, and then here's the other side to this. So currently, right now, Talib Kweli, the rapper, is going on a tirade against somebody that I personally know, and this dude named Diabolic, who's a white rapper from Suffolk County, right?
Mhm.
So they have a back and forth, and all Talib Kweli can do is say he's a Nazi fascist MAGA rapper. Diabolic is not a MAGA rapper, and he's not black. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that he's a remnant of that. It's like, well, I can't
Mm.
really challenge him on the argument. So racist, Nazi, fascist.
Yeah, yo, listen, I've seen Talib Kweli's page a few times, and I don't care if he sees this. That guy's not that bright. He's not that bright, bro. Okay, black cop, black cop, black cop, black cop. Stop shooting black people. We all gonna. You don't even get paid a whole lot. So take your M60, put it pawn lock. Take your 4.5 and you put it pawn lock. Looking for your people when you walk down the block. Here in America, you have drug spot. They get the black cop to watch the drug spot. The black drug dealer just avoid black cop. They're killing each other on an East Coast block. They're killing each other on a West Coast block. White police don't care about dot. I had to say it like that. Them want us killing each other over crack. Any way you
Stop right
put it,
there.
it's
Stop right there. Stop. See the narrative? See how the and I say this. There was a point that I respected KRS-One as a hip hop artist, but as I've evolved into caring more about what I put into my system, I realized some of these guys are just not that smart, and they're perpetuating a frame of thought that's actually contradictory to the upliftment of black people. So while you think he was doing you a favor, what he was doing was setting the groundwork for more black kids to get in trouble because you're telling them that the black cop is no good. So both had black cops, cars profiling, hardcore kids in the West got stressed. In the East, we're chased by the same black beast. The black cop is the only real obstacle. To what? But very psychological. Haven't you heard? It's the black cop killing black kids in Johannesburg. So now he took it to Africa. What's up, black cop? Yo, what's up? Your authorization says shoot your nation. You want to uphold the law? What could you do to me? The same law dissed the whole black community. You can't play both sides of the fence. 1993, mad kids are getting tens. It's just high level, moronic idiocy. And these are the people that are upheld in the community. So the
I
self-hate
wanna
narrative. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanna point one other thing out as we kind of get on the tail end of this whole thing. I realize that this idea, it kind of burns my britches a little bit when they say things like Republicans don't like black people, right? The Republicans don't like black folks. The Republican National Senatorial Committee is the Republican Hill Committee for the United States Senate, working to elect Republicans to the Senate. It was founded in 1916 as the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, reorganized in 1948 and renamed the National Republican Senatorial Committee. It has been chaired by Senator Tim Scott.
Hold on. So we gonna do this in an educational format. While you're in that Wikipedia window, bring up black skin white mask in Wikipedia. We're gonna show y'all the origins of this black skin white mask. There you go. Now, I can't really read that, so you're going to have to read that. But that's the origins. This is one of the origins from 1952, right? A book by philosopher psychiatrist, right? Franz Fanon. The book is written in the style of autoethnography, with Fanon sharing his own experiences while presenting a historical critique of the effects of racism and dehumanization inherent in situations of colonial dominion on the human psyche. Right. So this is one of the books that set the groundwork in the black academic space that led to propagating this.
Fanon portrays white people as having a deep seated fear of educated blacks. He argues that no matter how assimilated to white norms a black person may become, Whites will always exercise a sense of inferiority. This way of thinking was designed to keep blacks stuck in an inferior status within a colonial order. The divided self perception of a black subject who has lost his native culture origin and embraced the culture of the mother country produces an inferior sense of self in the black man. The black man
So
will
now
always
take
try.
25
This is
years of texts like this being the underpinning of what's taught in African studies in college. These are the things that were taught in political science classes in these left-leaning liberal colleges back in the 50s and 60s. So this is the seed work and the groundwork of some of that. There's another concept that I want to give you guys before we get out of here that I think is at the root of this. If you could go back to that Wikipedia window, and I want you to type in the concept of internalized racism in that Wikipedia window. And I want to remind y'all, Wikipedia is not the end all be all. It's just a good launching point to get kind of a basic understanding of what you're talking about. In
in
social
social
justice studies,
studies.
yeah, go ahead. Go
Yep.
ahead.
It's in social justice studies, internalized racism is a form of internalized oppression defined by sociologist Karen D. Pike. I don't know who that is, so we need to stop. This is how we do it, ladies and gentlemen. When we don't know something, we stop right where we at. We open up another Google window and we pull this up, and then I gotta share this tab instead. That is Karen D. Pike, semantic scholar. That is Sharon D. Pike. Is that the same lady? She's at University of California at Riverside. Let me make sure that that's the same person as the
Well,
internal.
it ain't gonna load. Don't worry about that. The image isn't as important. Yeah, that's her. Emeritus professor. That's most likely her.
Yeah,
Sociology
that's her. I
department.
just
It's pretty
Yep.
safe to say at this point. If it's not you and you're the other Karen D. Pike, then we apologize. But go
No,
ahead
that's
and
her.
see where this came from. Look at how this. These are the professors and the ideology that was taught to the generation before us. So these ideas got embedded into minority and specifically black culture.
In her study, The Psychology of Racism, Robin Nicole Johnson emphasizes that internalized racism involves both conscious and unconscious acceptance of a racial. So you can't be conscious of accepting something or not. Just the
Right.
unconscious acceptance of a racial hierarchy, in which a presumed superior race are consistently ranked above other races. The wild part about this, right? The wild part about this is if you're like me, you realize that these people are actually the white supremacists. These are the ones that are actually telling you that in some way, shape, or form, if you fall, the white people are superior. So therefore, they're the standard by which all other races are judging themselves. It's ridiculous.
Well,
But
internalized racism as a phenomenon is, and this is important, is a direct product of a racial classification system. So, what we need you guys to understand is that the racial hierarchy that's mentioned there, the product of a racial classification system, and is found across different racial groups and regions around the world where race exists as a social construct. So what that tells you is that there's places where this race idea doesn't exist as a social construct. You just got people. They ain't that sophisticated where you got a white person, a black person, he's a multi-biracial, and then you got these long list of adjectives. No, they just see people. So
right.
here's why for us it's almost insulting to suggest to us that we hate ourselves because we choose to stand up for and promote and identify with certain political ideologies and policy positions on things. It's ridiculous because there's only one race. You'll hear people say this all the time, even on the left. They'll say there's only one race, the human race, then proceed to tell you about all the other races. It's almost self-canceling. And that's what's most intellectually frustrating about this. And that's what saddens me the most about our neighbors and our friends and our communities who choose to disrespect and belittle Black and Latino and Asians and anyone else who choose to represent Republican values and conservative values and policy ideas. actually quite racist of you. And it's on par for what the Democrat Party, unfortunately, at this day and time represents. And unfortunately, it is what they've represented historically. So they haven't, the apple hasn't fallen that far from the tree. So, I hope we're giving you guys some good starting points to look at this narrative of self-hatred and look at those books that we shared. Look at some of those names and dig in, yourself, and don't take our word for it. But this is just another one of these narratives that, ultimately are not true, and they're more detrimental to Black people than they are, useful. So, go ahead, Ali. I'll let you close this out, bro.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, tucmedia.info is the website to support what we do here. Got to give a big shout out to our sponsor to this episode, Vote Mech. We appreciate the support. We'll play that ad on the way out. And again, make sure you're tuned in right here each and every Monday for the Urban Conservative Podcast. For my twin brother, Raheem Architect Soto, I'm Abdul Ali. This has been the Urban Conservative Podcast. Peace and love, y'all.
Woodson Bradley wants you to believe she fights for families, but she was a top platinum sales manager in Fortune high-tech marketing, an illegal pyramid scheme the Federal Trade Commission shut down. Over 350,000 people enrolled, and most of them lost everything. Woodson Bradley recruited them, and Woodson Bradley profited from their losses. And now she wants your vote. Woodson Bradley. Wrong then,